The marble floor was ice cold. I heard a crack, couldn't tell if it was my leg bone or my trust breaking. Lucas stood right in front of me, his face flushed with alcohol and rage. "You embarrassed me in front of her," he said. Like I'd committed some unforgivable crime. I just laughed. "Embarrassed you? You'll find out what losing everything really means." Blood spread across the floor, pooling around my heels. I didn't cry. I just pulled out my phone and pressed a name I hadn't dared call in 15 years. "Papa," I whispered. And just a few minutes later, the door burst open. I heard a loud crash outside, like someone had kicked the wooden door down, followed by heavy footsteps echoing down the stairs. In my hand, the phone flashed blue once before going silent. The voice on the other end was hard as steel. "Keep the line open. Don't do anything." I didn't scream. Didn't have the strength to. I only managed to look through the crack of the basement door and saw a broad-shouldered figure in black crouching quietly. A flashlight flared, then went dark. A calm voice spoke, as if reading a report. "Ms. Esme Sterling, I'm Damien. We're here to take you out." When the basement door swung open, the light hit my eyes so sharply I had to squint. A man in a black coat came down the steps, cold face, gray eyes reflecting the beam. "Ms. Esme Sterling?" he asked. Before I could answer, he knelt and lifted me as if I were something fragile about to break. The pain in my leg nearly knocked me out, but when his shoulder brushed against me, the faint smell of leather and gunpowder told me he wasn't police or rescue. These were the kind of men no one wanted to meet, unless they'd already reached the end of hope. As they carried me out of the basement, I saw another man waiting outside, silver hair, upright posture, gray suit. Under the car lights, his face froze me in place. "Dad." My voice broke. "Malcolm Sterling, the man the world believed had died 15 years ago in an explosion. He was alive, standing less than 10 feet from me." 1,000 questions burned in my throat. Why he disappeared. Why he left Mom and me to face the world alone. Why he came back now, but only one sentence made it out. "You're supposed to be dead." Malcolm looked at me without flinching. "No. They only think that, because if I were alive too many people wouldn't be." The short line was so cold I could almost feel my breath freeze. The man holding me, Damien, turned back. "We've cleared the area. No one's in any condition to harm her." I didn't ask what cleared meant, partly because I already knew. Partly because I didn't have the courage to know for sure. They took me to a black SUV, tinted windows, no plates. They wrapped me in a heavy coat, splinted my leg, and placed me in the back seat. When the door shut, it sounded like the world outside was sealed away. The car sped through the night. Streetlights slid across the rearview mirror, carving lines over Malcolm's face. Deep and rigid. He said nothing, hands clenched tight. Damien drove without a word. I looked out the window. The city was asleep, but inside me, everything had just awakened: memories, anger, fear, and a question that still had no answer. "Why now?" I whispered. "You've been watching me, haven't you?" "I always have," he said. "You just never noticed." I gave a dry laugh, like those hidden cameras in my house. Malcolm turned toward me, his eyes slicing through my words. "When a man has enemies, his daughter is never truly safe." After a pause, he asked, "That man, who is he?" "Lucas Hayes," I answered. "My husband." Malcolm nodded slightly, like rearranging a chess piece. "Who he is doesn't matter. What matters is that he laid hands on something that belongs to Sterling." "I'm not anyone's something." For the first time, his gaze softened, but only for a second. "I know. But to men like him, you're property, and when property gets damaged, they pay." His tone was steady, but the rage inside it was dangerous, ancient, instinctive, like an old beast awakened by an old wound. I leaned back, eyes closed. I didn't want to think about Lucas anymore, didn't want to remember the snap of bone or the sound of his shout when I slapped his mistress. I just wanted to breathe. To understand what was happening. I was devismarred. The car stopped in front of a suburban house, no sign, no lights. Just a line of windbreak trees. Damien opened the door and carried me inside. The room was small, sterile white, with a medical table and tools. A doctor waited. No questions needed, everything had been arranged before they even came for me. The doctor injected something, reset my leg. I heard metal clink softly. Malcolm stood by the window, silent as stone. When the doctor left, only the three of us remained, the air colder than the night outside. You're alive. Which means all these years. You've been watching me, haven't you? Yes. He said. From afar. You thought I'd let you be. Let me be. I've lived in debt, lost my job, gone through a divorce, and now almost died because of someone I trusted. You call that protection? If I hadn't, you'd have died 10 times over. Something in his voice stopped me. He wasn't justifying himself, he was stating a fact. After a moment, he came closer and placed a phone and a memory card on the table. Everything about Hayes and his family is in here. Everything you need to know. I looked at them, then at him. What are you planning to do? To do what they fear most, erase their name from this world. I sighed. You always think violence can fix everything. You don't understand. Sometimes violence is the only language people listen to. Outside, rain began tapping softly on the metal roof. I watched it for a while, then said quietly, I don't want to kill anyone. I don't want to be like them. If there's a price to pay, I'll make them lose everything, but on my terms. Malcolm looked at me for a long time, then nodded. Your choice. But remember, once you step into this game, there's no turning back. I never had a way back. He laid a hand on my shoulder, a touch that said he wouldn't stop me. But he also wouldn't forgive failure. When he and Damien left, the room was filled only with the hum of the air conditioner and the smell of antiseptic. I opened the phone. One unread message blinked on the screen. Lucas, I'm sorry, don't call the police. I laughed. The game had just begun. When I left the recovery room, I tried to walk normally. My leg was still wrapped in bandages and braces, each step needing support, but Lucas's eyes when he hugged me, pretending to care, told me everything. He believed every word I said. It was just an accident. We need to stay calm. He kissed my forehead gently, as if that could undo everything, saying the kind of words he thought would soothe me. You're the most important thing. I'll fix everything. My heartbeat was uneven, but the voice in my head had changed. I focused on what needed to be done: collect, keep, wait for the moment when every locked door would fly open. At home, everything still gleamed as before: large glass doors, brass-plated stairs, the living room carpet he once bragged was imported from Europe. Visitors came, messages of concern arrived, flowers, and the polite sighs of sympathy. People looked at me with pity and curiosity. They didn't know, or pretended not to know, that the man sitting right there in the living room was the one who broke my leg, and they would never suspect the small, trembling wife beside him, the same wife who had supposedly fallen down the stairs just a few days ago. My first advantage was this: I was still his wife. I had keys, the Wi-Fi password, access to things he thought were his alone. I didn't need to storm into his room or scream. I let the play continue, the act of forgiveness, while I worked in silence. I called Damien once the back door was locked. He appeared in the night, carrying a black bag filled with basic tech gear. An external drive, several tiny cameras, a radio scanner. He looked at me, not judging, only practical. Are you ready? I'm ready. But we do this fast and quiet. No noise. I want evidence, not bullets. He smiled, understanding without a word. Damien was the kind of man who did what needed to be done, no questions, just orders. The plan looked simple on paper but required precision. Plant cameras in key spots, copy data from Lucas's personal computer, recover the files he thought he'd deleted, and extract every transaction that could prove fraud. Damien handled the tech. I knew where to look because I used to tidy his desk and overheard his calls to open restricted doors. Familiar passwords, birth dates, pet names, a few favorite numbers became keys to his secrets. That night, beneath the hum of the air conditioner and the faint music drifting down from upstairs, we hid miniature cameras inside the chandelier, behind picture frames, and inside a porcelain vase in the wine cabinet. The micro recorders uploaded everything to a cloud drive I'd coded under an untraceable name. Damien checked angles, lighting, and blind spots with surgical precision. I stood watching, feeling like both a director and a gardener planting seeds hoping something would grow. The next day, I went back to my routine as if everything were fine. I made small talk with Lucas, asked harmless questions, let him feel safe. As his wife, I had the right to open his company laptop when he was away. He often left urgent projects open. I took advantage. When he went down to the garage to inspect a shipment of cars, I slipped into his office and plugged in the external drive. It wasn't complicated, just a few clicks inside the projects folder he thought I didn't know existed. I copied file after file, drawings, internal emails, confidential reports. The rumors I'd once heard about shady deals became numbers on a screen before my eyes. Secret contracts, warehouse invoices, shell companies funneling money, and a string of emails between Lucas and a contractor near the Hudson. Cold text, spelling out a plan to buy up riverfront land dirt cheap, bypass zoning paperwork, pour weak concrete for foundations, then fast-track government funding with forged approvals. The horror was how neatly he erased responsibility. If the bridge collapsed, they'd blame the inspection engineer, someone easy to forget or buy off. Names, figures, PDFs layered like a map of crimes. I sat frozen. This wasn't just corruption. This was human life. Bridges, roads. People along the Hudson traded for profit. And Lucas was at the center of it all. I read through each email, feeling a chill crawl down my spine. Signing dates, deadlines, account numbers. There was even a list of wire transfers to offshore accounts, money withdrawn right after every state payment cleared. Who were they fooling? Ordinary people fighting just to survive. I thought of a bridge in a small town I once passed, an old man pushing his bicycle across, smiling simply. If that bridge fell one day, who would be held responsible? I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I turned around, took photos of key files with my phone, and backed them up to the drive. Damien waited outside, watchful, calm. "Do you want to take this public?" he asked. "Or handle it quietly?" I looked at him, voice steady as still water. "Public. But in a way that makes them collapse on their own, not because we fired a bullet." I didn't need to explain the rage behind my calm. "I won't shoot him, Damien. I'll let him fall apart himself." He looked at me half surprised, half admiring, like a man witnessing someone utterly resolute. "All right. I'll back you up. Just make sure no one can trace our footprints." The following days were a chain of silent actions. I pieced together every bit of proof: land sale contracts, falsified inspection reports, invoices for substandard materials. I questioned people casually: contractors, laborers asking innocent things. Do they wear gloves when welding? Did they test the foundation piles? Simple questions. But I saw unease flicker in their eyes. One afternoon, I sat at a riverside cafe, watching the Hudson flow, listening to locals talk about an old bridge that had rotted for years. They worried every time a truck crossed. I took notes, recorded their words, small bricks for a much larger wall. At the same time, I reached out to Julian, the man who once worked in the Sterling family's finance division. He was crucial. Not a movie-style mafioso, but someone who could trace shell companies, follow money trails, locate hidden withdrawals. He sent me lists of transactions and dummy corporations. Each crossed-out name was another clue. Every printed page, another brick in the wall of evidence. During those days of pretending peace, Lucas became too confident. He bathed in his illusion of control, money, influence, networks. I stayed silent. I wanted to see the exact second he realized he'd lost the one thing that mattered most: power. I didn't need to shoot him. I'd let him watch his empire collapse. When all the pieces were ready, I packaged everything: files, recordings, hidden camera footage, workers' testimonies, altered technical reports, all backed up safely. Damien and Julian knew the storage locations. We divided the work: one set for prosecutors, one for the press, one to ensure the public would see undeniable truth. I chose the open path, but not the noisy one. I wanted the law and the people to finish what I started. The party took place on the 40th floor of the Lancaster Hotel, the financial elite's temple for million-dollar deals. Golden lights spread across the marble floor like honey, and the wine glittered in crystal glasses so thin one touch could break them. Lucas stood at the center, his Italian-tailored suit perfect, his smile flawless, the kind only men wear when they believe they're untouchable. Beside him, Nora glowed in a silver gown, lips painted deep red, as if the night were their private celebration. I entered after the toast had begun. My crutch tapped the marble sharply, echoing between laughter, clinking glasses, and soft jazz. Every head turned, whispering started. A few hands covered mouths. Some exchanged glances, guessing why I was there. Lucas froze for a split second, then recovered, flashing his usual grin. "You made it," he said smoothly, as if rehearsed in front of a mirror. "Didn't think you'd be strong enough to come." I kept my tone even. "You're right, but I couldn't miss such an important occasion. After all, it's our company, isn't it?" He hesitated, then quickly regained his host's charm. "Of course. Darling, tonight isn't for old stories. Everyone here admires your strength. A woman who can forgive now. That's something rare." I nodded, smiling faintly. But my hand tightened around the crutch until my knuckles went white. "Forgive?" He called my silence forgiveness. My survival. Weakness. I walked past him, took a glass of wine from a waiter, and stood in a far corner. The whole room felt like a play. I'd already memorized every line, every cue, applause, fake compliments, and one man who thought he was the center of the universe. Lucas chatted with investors, laughed with reporters, and introduced Nora as the company's promising new PR director. He didn't know that in just a few minutes, the screen behind him would change the entire course of the night. Damien was in the tech booth, headphones on, eyes locked on his laptop. At my signal, the video would play. I took a sip of wine, the bitter taste spreading across my tongue. It wasn't that my hands hadn't shaken thinking about this before, but tonight, there was no room for emotion. As Lucas began thanking everyone, I looked at my watch. The minute hand touched 12. I tilted my head slightly. The signal was sent. The massive screen behind him suddenly flared to life. The entire hall turned to look. At first, someone thought it was a new company ad. Then Lucas's own voice came through. He laughed in the recording, the sound laced with arrogance and the faint beeping of a hospital monitor. "She's just a tax tool. Don't look so serious, Nora. Without Esme, we wouldn't have saved a single dollar." The music stopped, glasses hit tables, Lucas froze, his face drained of color. He glanced around, forcing a stiff smile, as if a few clever words could make people believe this was just a misunderstanding, but the video kept playing. There he was on a hospital bed, laughing with Nora, bragging that I was too stupid to read what I signed, discussing profits hidden inside accounts. People began looking at each other, then at me. Some stepped back, afraid to be caught in the scandal. Nora turned pale, retreating toward the exit, while Lucas shouted, "Turn it off." "Who did this?" I set my glass down, leaned on my crutch, and took a few steps forward. "You've always been good at talking in front of a crowd," I said softly. Just loud enough for the microphone to catch. "Too bad this time." The audience stopped clapping. "Esme, are you insane?" Lucas screamed. His face red, his voice cracking. I looked straight at him, calm. "No. I'm finally awake." Then came the first flash, and another, dozens of them, raining down like a storm. Reporters stood up. Investors pulled out their phones, hotel staff panicked. Lucas tried to charge toward me, but Damien was already blocking his path one look from him. And no one dared move closer. I turned away and walked through the sea of stairs. Each step was heavy, but strangely, my chest felt light, like I'd just dropped a stone I'd carried for years. Behind me, Lucas's voice echoed, calling my name. I didn't look back. His shouts mixed with the sound of hundreds of cameras, chairs scraping, and whispers rippling through the room like wind. When the elevator doors closed, I saw my reflection in the gold mirror. My lips were pale, eyes still marked with tears, but the smile was real. The first genuine smile since the night I stopped fearing the dark. When the doors opened on the ground floor, Damien was waiting. He tossed me a long coat. "You okay?" I'm fine. He'll lose everything, it's only a matter of time. And you? Damien asked, watching me through the rearview mirror as we left the hotel. I stayed quiet for a moment, watching the streetlights slide past the window. I don't know. But at least tonight, I got back the right to stand tall. In the distance, police sirens wailed. Media vans swarmed toward the Lancaster Hotel, where a scandal had just exploded like a bomb in the investment world. And me, the legal wife for tax benefits, I was leaving. Not as someone running away, but as the one who'd just signed the sentence for her betrayer. Wind slipped through the cracked window. I caught the scent of rain and freedom. It wasn't over yet, but for the first time, I knew I was walking the right path. The car drove toward my father's house like a lifeboat, leaving a storm. I leaned against the window, city lights flickering by, but inside I felt cold, like something had been torn open. Damien drove slowly, silent. Malcolm sat beside him, eyes fixed ahead. Too used to roads like this, I thought about Lucas's scream, the camera flashes. The screen in that ballroom, images still burned in my mind. But what unsettled me most was a new question. How did my father know so much? How had this family lived in the shadows for so long? The iron gate opened. The screen in Talstamidi. The question haven't time. The car rolled into a small courtyard shrouded in mist. The house he'd prepared looked more like a lab than a home, not the kind of wealth that flaunted, but the kind that hid. Security systems, concealed entrances, bulletproof windows. They helped me into a warm study lit softly, leather-bound books lining the shelves, a few old photos on the walls. Malcolm pulled out a chair for me, then sat opposite, hands resting on the desk, eyes steady like a man about to untie a knot. One thread at a time. Tired? He asked. I'm fine, I said, keeping my voice steady. You said you had something important to tell me, and you should hear all of it, not just part. Malcolm stood, opened a large drawer, and pulled out a dark wooden box. Inside were an old film reel, some burnt photos, and a yellowed envelope. He laid them out like wounds for me to see. I touched the reel gently, feeling the roughness of time. What is this? I asked. The truth, he said. The truth your mother tried to protect, and they buried with fire and money. He placed one of the photos on the desk, a picture of a small road. Metal roofs, blazing, smoke curling upward. In the corner, a woman held a child in her arms. That woman was my mother. It took me a moment to recognize her. Memories flooded in her work shoes, the smell of morning coffee, her calm voice. Suddenly, I remembered the unanswered questions. The time she'd gently pulled my hand away when things got serious, the way she'd looked down the hallway, afraid someone might hear what she knew. Malcolm turned on the projector. The footage was grainy, the film crackling. A short video appeared, an opening ceremony, people laughing, and then chaos, fire, screaming, running. The narrator's voice said, May 3rd. Vance Chemicals. Groundbreaking. The accident happened that night. My heart stopped for a second. Malcolm's voice was low but sharp. They didn't call it an accident. They called it a plan. They needed the land. They needed the victims cleared out. I couldn't stop myself from asking, Mother, she was. He lowered his voice. Killed. They fooled everyone into thinking it was an accident. The police were paid off. The evidence was switched. Your mother took photos. She tried to send them to the press. Then, one day, she disappeared. They said she died in an accident, and the case was closed. You know what I did? I stormed into their meeting with the photos and papers. But no one dared bring them forward. They stayed silent, afraid of losing power, money, status. My blood boiled. A buried rage surfaced, not just against Lucas, but against a whole system that had devoured justice. What did you do? I asked. Malcolm looked down at his hands and exhaled. I tried to go through the proper channels. I leaked files to the press, to people I trusted. They paid the price. Some reporters lost their jobs, some witnesses were threatened. Then came the explosion, the one they said was an industrial accident that killed dozens. They put my name on the list. Said I was dead. He closed his eyes briefly, as if reliving the smoke and fire. I disappeared, but I didn't die. I went underground to protect you, to make them believe the trail was gone, so I could keep watching and collecting. Why? Why stay silent? Why let Mom? Because when the system is that deep, he cut in. A whistleblower's voice dies easily. Words can be denied. Documents can be forged. Even blood isn't considered proof. I learned that the hard way. If I had spoken too soon, they would have killed your mother to silence her. I had to make it airtight, undeniable. That's why I had to die. I pushed back the chair and stood abruptly. So you faked your death to live in the dark and left my mother to die alone. You call that protection? The words cut through the air like knives. I felt betrayed by the only person who had ever promised to protect me. Malcolm stood up slowly. I lost your mother, my honor, and everything I owned back then, but I stayed alive to find the truth. I lived to wait for the moment when every broken piece could be put back together. And tonight, you've seen the first one. He looked straight at me, not asking for forgiveness, not begging for understanding. I know I was wrong to leave you alone, but if I hadn't, they would have kept going and you would never have had the chance to find justice in your own way. Silence settled like a heavy curtain. My eyes burned, but I didn't cry. What filled me instead was a deep realization of how high the price of truth was, and how much it had already taken. The image of my mother in that burnt photo came to life again, her eyes meeting mine as if to pass me a message, not a plea for help but a whisper, "Do what's right, my child. We can make them face what they've done," I said slowly, "but I don't want to do it your way. I don't want another life lost in the name of justice. If we expose them and let the law and the public do their part, they'll destroy themselves. Let their own greed and cruelty be their undoing." Malcolm looked at me. For a moment, he seemed to see someone different. Not the little girl he once protected, but an equal. He nodded slowly. "You're right, I've spilled too much blood already. I paid for it with myself. If you choose that path, the path of truth, law, and the press, I'll stand behind you. But remember, when you shine light into darkness, the beasts will react. They'll try to bite it. You need to be ready." And I smiled, a harder smile than before. "No. We don't kill. We let them kill each other with the very things they've sown." I said it quietly. Like a vow for my mother. For myself. And for everyone they'd left behind. Malcolm didn't answer right away. He looked at the photo and the film reel, then back at me. In his eyes was something heavy, sorrow and pride intertwined. "Then do it. I'll prepare what's needed. But promise me one thing. You won't let hatred turn you into them." I held the wooden box close inside it. Fragments of time and truth. Not weapons of blood, but weapons of light. I placed a hand over my chest, feeling my heartbeat rise. "I promise," I said. And for the first time in months, I saw a path ahead, one carved by truth, leading toward justice. No matter how dark the way. That night, rain drizzled down, and the road to the Hayes mansion gleamed under golden lights, shimmering like a lie wrapped in luxury. After the scandal at the Lancaster Hotel, the media had quieted. But the undercurrent was still strong. Lucas was busy rebuilding his image with parties and new investor pitches, and I, the wife who had forgiven, walked beside him, smiling softly, playing my role to perfection. But amid the clinking glasses and polite compliments, I noticed something strange about Nora. She looked tired, her skin pale, her hands unconsciously resting on her stomach every time she sat down. There was something trembling in her eyes, not fear of me, but fear of what was growing inside her. That night, after the guests left, I stood by the window, watching the rain on the garden leaves. Nora approached, holding a glass of untouched wine. "Esme," she said softly, "I don't know how you can still be here after everything. I thought you hated me." I turned to her, the chandelier light reflecting on her face. "I used to," I said calmly. "But now I just want the truth. Tell me, Nora, what are you afraid of?" The glass in her hand trembled. I saw her throat tighten, as if she wanted to speak but couldn't. "Nothing," she whispered. "I've just been tired lately." I stepped closer and murmured, "If you're tired because you're pregnant, You should be more careful. She froze, eyes wide. Her face turned paper white. You know, I gently placed my hand over the glass she was holding. I don't guess. I saw the prenatal appointment slip in your purse. 11 weeks, right? She went silent, lips quivering. Tears began to fall before she could hide them. Esme. You don't understand. This. I cut her off. You're right. I don't. But I will. She walked away, and I stayed there, listening to the rain hit the window frame. I knew that feeling, the kind where you're not just afraid of being exposed, but afraid because you no longer recognize yourself, and I knew that to reach the end of this story, I had to stay colder than she was. The next morning, I went to the clinic Nora had been visiting, using the name of a cousin with shared insurance. I didn't need to do much. A little cash and a smile were enough for the nurse to open the records. And there it was, the name listed under financial sponsor, William Hayes. My hand froze on the page. William Hayes, the father of Lucas. The man everyone called a legend in construction, the one who sat at the head of every family meeting, preaching about morality and tradition. The same man who once told me, Esme, you're a good girl. But remember, an obedient wife stays behind her husband. I let out a faint laugh. Yes, behind her husband to hide the sins of her father-in-law, apparently. That afternoon, I met Damien at a small cafe near the docks. He sat in the corner. Dark coat, calm eyes as always. Looks like you've found something, he said. I handed him the file. Not just a secret. This is a crack in the entire family. He skimmed through it, frowning. William, I nodded. And the baby Nora's carrying, it's not Lucas's. DNA confirmed. Damien looked up at me. What are you planning to do? I won't kill anyone, Damien. But I'll make sure they do it themselves. The plan took shape that night. I needed the perfect moment, and William Hayes handed it to me himself. His 60th birthday. A grand celebration, with journalists, politicians, and investors all attending. Lucas would give his speech. Nora would surely be there. And I would only need to stand in the right place. On the day of the party, the Hayes mansion gleamed like a fortress of light. I arrived late deliberately to make sure everyone noticed. As I stepped inside, the entire hall turned to look. William laughed heartily, his voice booming like a man who once ruled the world. Esme, I've always thought of you as a daughter. It's been ages since you've joined a family gathering. I walked up and shook his hand. Happy birthday, Father. I said it deliberately. Loud enough for Lucas to hear. He glanced at me, unsure whether it was sarcasm or reconciliation. The party unfolded under the soft hum of classical music and polite toasts. I sat quietly, watching the 60-year-old man laugh with the world, raising his glass of red wine as if guilt had never existed. Then, when the host announced a special gift from the Hayes family, the lights dimmed, and the giant screen flickered on, a gentle melody began to play. Then the images appeared. At first, they were harmless. William with his family, ceremonies, construction projects. Then the screen shifted. Nora appeared in an ultrasound room. Lucas turned sharply, his eyes widening. Next came a series of wire transfers labeled medical bills, private patient, the sender. William Hayes. A wave of whispers rippled through the room. William's face went pale as he stood, his voice hoarse. Who allowed this to play? But the clip continued. The final image appeared, a DNA test result. The last line was printed in bold. Match result, 99.8%. William Hayes. Lucas stumbled forward, slamming his hand on the table. Father, say something, tell me this isn't true. William turned, his face drained of color, lips trembling, voice breaking. Lucas, listen, I was deceived. You don't understand. His words were cut off by the first punch. Lucas lunged at him, beating him until others had to pull him away. Reporters, staff, and guests broke into chaos. Camera flashes exploded, shutters clicked wildly. Nora collapsed to the floor, clutching her stomach, sobbing soundlessly. Everything unfolded exactly as I had planned, no more, no less. They were destroying each other with the very truth they had buried. Security restrained Lucas as he screamed. You betrayed my mother. You betrayed this entire family. You let me carry your sins all my life just to cover this up. William fell to his knees, hands trembling. Every gaze in the room turned on him. The empire he had built over 30 years crumbled in 5 minutes. I turned away. Damien was waiting outside, leaning against the car. He asked quietly. Everything okay? Perfect. Now the world will see who the real monster in this story is. The night wind from the Hudson River swept through the rows of rusted containers, carrying the smell of salt and old oil. I gripped my phone tightly, my thumb shaking slightly. But my mind clearer than ever. On the screen, the last message from my father's number glowed. Don't come here. I knew what he meant. But if I didn't go, this might be the last time I ever heard his voice. Damien tried to stop me as I stepped out of the car. Esme, if you go in there, you won't just be facing Lucas. You'll be facing everything you've been running from. He's not sure your father can still be saved. I tightened my grip on the metal crutch. I'm not here to save him. I'm here to end it. The yard at Pier 7 was as empty as an abandoned warehouse. With only a few shadows moving under the flickering sodium lights, Lucas's black SUV was parked by the entrance, the engine still warm. I walked slowly, hearing the wind whistle through the steel gaps and the water lapping against the dock. The silence was wrong, the kind that comes right before violence. The metal door burst open, and I saw him. Malcolm was tied to a metal chair, his shirt stained with blood, the hanging lamp above glaring down on his face. Lucas stood behind him, gun in hand, eyes wild. So you finally came, he rasped. You're always late, Esme. Just like you were late to save this marriage. I kept my voice steady. You don't have to do this. Let him go. And I'll hand over everything. You still have a chance. I have to cicadito. I have to cicadito. Lucas laughed bitterly. A chance. You think there's still such a thing? My company. My father. The entire Hayes name is ruined because of you. And you think I still have a chance. He pressed the gun against Malcolm's head. I just want what's mine, the USB, the documents, everything you've got, hand them over. Or watch him die right here. Malcolm lifted his head, his lips bleeding. Don't listen to him. Esme. If you give him that, everything you've done will mean nothing. Shut up. Lucas roared, kicking the chair hard. I took another step forward, the overhead light glinting off my dark dress. Lucas, listen to me. You don't know the whole story. Your father William, he. Before I could finish, a woman's voice rang out behind me. He knows, Esme. He just doesn't want to believe it. I turned. Nora stood there, long coat, hair tied back, her face gaunt but her eyes sharp. She stepped out of the shadows, holding a stack of documents. He told me to stay quiet, but I can't anymore, she said. I've gone to the FBI. Everything William Hayes did, including the plan to get rid of me and the baby, is already on record. Lucas spun around, his face twisting. You're lying. Nora threw the folder at him. If I were lying, the FBI wouldn't have surrounded this place. He staggered back, eyes darting wildly. I knew she wasn't lying. The sound of engines outside, the rush of boots along the steel walkway, it had begun. Lucas snapped. He screamed, waving the gun between all of us. Shut up. You think you can take me down? I saw his eyes dilated, frantic. Gone. I slowly raised my phone, my voice unnervingly calm. Lucas. Do you know you're being live-streamed right now? He frowned. What? I pressed a button on the screen. The phone vibrated softly as I pointed toward the small camera mounted on the wall. For the past 10 minutes, everything you've said has been broadcast live through Hayes Construction's internal network. The whole city's watching us. His eyes bulged. You're lying. I shook my head. You can check. Just then, his phone rang, one of the shareholders calling. He looked down, face draining of color. Dozens of messages flashed across the screen. Lucas, what's happening? Shut the stream off. The FBI's outside. He screamed, threw his phone to the ground, and aimed the gun at me. You ruined everything I had, Esme. What more do you want? The screamed out Maypee. Don't, Malcolm shouted, struggling to stand despite the ropes. Damien burst through the door, gun drawn. The gunfire cracked like thunder. A bullet grazed past me, slamming into a metal drum. Nora screamed, falling to the ground. Lucas spun around, firing wildly. I lunged forward, pushing Malcolm aside, then another shot tore through the air. When I turned back, my father was clutching his chest, blood spreading fast across his shirt. He looked at me, his breathing shallow. No, no, I cried, dropping to my knees beside him, my hands shaking too hard to hold him. Malcolm gave a faint smile, a thin line of blood slipping from his lips. Don't cry. You're stronger than I thought. I pressed my hands against his chest, feeling the heartbeat fade. Don't talk. The ambulance is coming. He shook his head weakly. No need. You're the only thing I ever did right. Esme. His last words dissolved into the wind. His eyes closed. His hand slipped from mine. Outside, FBI sirens blared. Red and blue lights swept through the cracks of the iron doors. Agents tackled Lucas to the ground, his gun clattering away. I sat there, my father's blood on my hands, on my dress hot and heavy, dragging me deeper. Damien came to me, gripping my shoulder. Esme. We have to go. The police will take it from here. Everything I'd fought for. Exposing the truth. Seeking justice had ended in blood. Nora was carried out on a stretcher, clutching her stomach, tears blurring her face. Esme. She whispered, trembling. I'm sorry. I nodded slightly. There was nothing left to forgive, and nothing left to hate. A police officer approached quietly. Are you Esme Sterling? Yes. We saw the live stream. You saved a lot of people tonight. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. No, I just lost one more. The rain fell harder. I looked toward the warehouse where my father's body now lay under a white sheet. In my memory, he was still standing tall, his voice firm, his eyes cold, saying his final words to me. No one's clean in this world. Maybe he was right. But even in all that filth, I still had to believe that something within us stays bright enough not to be swallowed whole. I turned and walked into the cold Hudson night without looking back. Because if I did, I knew I wouldn't survive another day. I don't remember how many hours I slept, or if I slept at all. Everything felt like a heavy dream, where gunfire, rain, and my father's final words blended together, echoing endlessly, "You're the only thing I ever did right." I lost him, but in the same breath, I lost the last part of myself that once believed justice was just a headline on the news. By morning, every channel was filled with it. Pier 7 scandal shakes the financial world. Hayes construction. Total collapse. FBI reopens investigation into 15-year-old fire. Each headline cut cold, slicing through everything I'd lived, believed, and loved. I went to the Federal Investigation Bureau that afternoon. They had been expecting me. A young female agent, hair neatly tied back, stood to shake my hand. Her voice was soft but firm. "Ms. Sterling, we've received all the data. Do you wish to be registered as a whistleblower, or as a witness?" I shook my head. "I don't want any title, I just want this to end the right way." She didn't ask further. When I placed the final USB drive on the table, it felt like I had just laid down my entire past. My mother's photos, the files my father had guarded for 15 years, the internal data from Hayes that I had copied from Lucas's computer, all of it would now belong to the law, no longer to me. I walked out of the room lighter, yet hollow in a way no one could name. Damien was waiting in the hallway, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You handed over everything." He passed me a cup, speaking quietly. "That's it. Then." I took a sip. "No, Damien. Things like this, they're never truly over. They just stop at a point so someone else can begin the rest." He looked at me, then sighed. "So what will you do when the curtain finally falls?" I turned to the glass window. where the New York sky was draped in clouds. Start over. But this time, not with money or pride, with what my father once lost. 3 months later, the Hayes case officially closed. Nearly all the key shareholders were arrested, and their assets frozen. Lucas was convicted of conspiracy, while William Hayes awaiting trial was found dead in his isolation cell. The press called it the collapse of a dynasty, and me, the one who had lit the spark, vanished from the public eye. I moved into a small house by the river, the one my father had bought years ago, unknown to anyone. Not far away, the Hudson Bridge still stood tall, carrying traffic every day. While no one knew it had witnessed everything that happened, winter came early, the wind sharp and wet. In my small room, I cleared my desk, putting away all the documents that had gone back to the FBI. The only thing I kept was a photograph of my mother, her gentle smile, her eyes still bright like those autumn mornings long ago. I set the photo on the table and wrote the first words in my notebook in months. The Leela Foundation. The name I chose was hers. My mother once told me, "Truth is like water. You can't hold it back forever, it will always find a way through, no matter how small the crack." I wanted this foundation to do what she never got the chance to: help women, the abused, the silenced, those crushed under power. I had been silent too long, so maybe this was the only way left to live. To speak for them. When I shared the idea with Damien, he smiled. "A foundation? After everything you've been through, I thought you'd just disappear." I took a sip of tea and replied softly, "If I disappear, then everything my father, my mother, and all the innocent ones endured would mean nothing. I'm not seeking revenge, Damien. I'm cleansing." He tilted his head. "What's the difference?" I looked out the window. "Revenge is wanting others to hurt like you did. Cleansing is making sure no one else ever has to." The following months were busier than ever. Lawyers, sponsors, community groups, everyone was curious about the Lila Foundation, created by Esme Sterling, the woman who had brought down the Hayes Empire. I stayed away from cameras, letting the people I hired take the spotlight. I worked in the shadows, the way my father once did, but this time, not to hide, but to lift. On the foundation's opening day, I visited the new office in Lower Manhattan, a small white room with glass windows facing the river. On the wall hung a sign, "The Lila Foundation. Justice, not revenge." The slogan was mine, short, but it held everything I had learned from the ashes. That afternoon, I walked along the Hudson. The air was cool, but thin sunlight still broke through the clouds, laying a pale gold shimmer over the water. I stopped midway across the bridge, traffic roaring behind me, and endless water ahead. The wedding ring still sat on my finger, the one I had never taken off since Lucas slid it on me all those years ago. Many times, I had thought of throwing it away, but always kept it, afraid to lose a piece of memory. But today, I knew it was time. I took it off, the cold metal sending a shiver through my hand. I looked at it for a long moment, then threw it into the river. The silver ring spun once, twice, then disappeared beneath the waves. The perfect circle, like the love I once thought eternal, was now just a brief spark swallowed by the water. I smiled softly. No more tears, no more hate. Only peace at last, the kind I had spent a lifetime chasing. The letter came on a gray afternoon, while I was sipping hot coffee in the small riverside kitchen. Damien had just left after a meeting with the foundation's lawyers. I was sorting through sponsorship contracts, tired but alert. My phone screen blinked once, a mail notification, but not from email. It was a white envelope lying on the table, no sender mark, no stamp. Only my name scrawled in black ink, Esme Sterling. My heart didn't jump, but there was a strange weight in the room, as if someone had placed something heavy right on the table before me. I tore open the envelope, pulled out the single sheet, and read. The words were brief, precise, almost cold. "Your father didn't trigger the explosion that year. It was your mother. She did it to stop William Hayes from destroying the evidence. I know this because I was the one who fixed the fire alarm system that night. Find the old film reel in the metal chest. Right corner, your mother left a mark there. Signed, The Mechanic. Pier 3. 1999. I stood still. the paper in my hand feeling both heavier and lighter at once, a paradox. My entire life had been built on the story of a father who faked his death to protect me. To avenge my mother's murder after she tried to expose their crimes. Everything I had just gone through uncovering Hayes, destroying an empire, building a foundation for victims had been built on that one scene. A mother murdered, a father silently fighting back. And now, a few crooked lines on a scrap of paper appended it all. I stared at the signature, the mechanic. Somehow, that name alone was enough to make my memories twist backward. 1999. The numbers echoed in my mind like warning bells. I wasn't afraid of what the paper said, only of something deeper. The realization that I might have been looking at the wrong reflection all these years. What was true? What had been constructed? And who had made me believe it? I called Damien. I read it to him. The silence on the other end hung thick. Like a curtain. "I'll come," he said finally. "We'll verify it. Don't do anything yet." I hung up, but my thoughts were already racing. Fragments returned: my mother holding me and crying the night of the fire. The photo with burnt edges Malcolm once showed me. Her quiet life before it all ended. Everything looked different now. If she truly did it, she wasn't just a victim, she was someone who chose the price of truth. And if that was true, then the story of the daughter her father protected by faking his death was really about a man who accepted the lie, not because he was innocent, but because he needed to hide something or someone else. Damien arrived quickly, calm as always. But I saw it in his eyes, doubt, and understanding that this could unravel everything we had just stitched back together. "We have to trace the source," he said. "The sender left no trace. The mechanic. Pier 3. If anyone from that time's still alive, they're old now. But there might be records. Your mother left a mark. The metal chest, where is it?" I remembered, among my father's old archives, beneath a wooden floorboard, there was a rusted metal box. I had opened it when the investigation began. Inside were a film reel, some photos, and a note my mother had written. But I had never studied each frame through this new lens. I ran to my study, turned on the light, pulled the box from the drawer. The old reel was still there, as if freshly taken from time. I mounted it onto the old projector in the storage room and sat alone after hours to watch what might rewrite my life. The film wobbled, colors faded, sound crackling. I replayed it frame by frame, my eyes fixed on the screen. First came the groundbreaking ceremony, people laughing, shaking hands, ribbons fluttering. Then the shouting, smoke erupted. Chaos. People running. In a shadowed corner, a woman stood still, her face turned away, and that silhouette made my heart twist. I enlarged the frame, slowed it down. Paused. The woman bent toward a device, her hands moving over a control panel. My hands trembled as I focused the lens. Her hair, her blouse, her necklace. It was my mother. I replayed it again. And again. Each time was another blow to the belief I had carried for 15 years. She didn't flee. She didn't scream. She was doing something with a machine in the corner of the warehouse. When the smoke rose, she turned toward it, her hands shaking but determined. The last clear image. A metal plate reading "Disable, Override," and next to it, handwriting small but familiar. Just like the notes she used to leave me. My heart stopped. I broke down, not loud sobs, but the kind that empty you from within, the kind that comes when you realize your entire life rested on a lie, and at the same time, another feeling: anger, confusion. Did she do it to stop William Hayes, to save the evidence, or to save me? Someone else. Damien stood behind me, resting a hand on my shoulder. "Esme," he said softly. "If your mother did this, then she destroyed herself to protect the proof. It's a massive act too long ago to undo, but it's also possible. Malcolm might have edited other footage before. We need to verify dates, text, frame integrity, and the one who sent the letter. They might want you to find the truth, or to break you." He was right. Each possibility opened another door, and I couldn't rush through them. But truth shouldn't be hidden out of fear of pain. Was my mother brave or reckless? Maybe both. The woman I had mourned all my life as a victim was the one who lit the fuse to protect the truth. The thought cut like glass. I called the old church my mother used to visit. Asked about the people she once helped. I called old neighbors. Threads began to emerge. She had arranged to meet a mechanic at Pier 3 days before the explosion. That mechanic, according to an unverified account, had tampered with a fire alarm system to make the incident look like an accident. If he was still alive, he would know exactly who pressed the button. Damien requested access to the FBI's old archives, promising to help me cross-check dates, handwriting, everything. In the days that followed, I lived in a fog torn between grief for my mother and the weight of this new responsibility, to face the truth, even when it tore me apart. One night, I took the film reel to the kitchen, lit a cigarette, and sat still. The ember glowed like a fragile hope. I wondered how brave did she have to be, to place her hand on that machine. Did she look at her child knowing she wouldn't be there and think, I'll do this, even if it costs me everything? I loved her for her courage, and I hated her for the lie. I loved Malcolm for protecting a secret so heavy and believing it was right, and I hated him for turning that protection into the very deceit I once vowed to destroy. Truth was no longer a straight line, it was a tangled knot binding us all to guilt and duty. I stood, bowed before my mother's photo on the shelf, and brushed my fingers against the glass. Mom, I whispered, I spent my whole life avenging a woman who died saving me. My voice cracked, but not with regret. Because if she truly did that, then she wasn't a victim. She was the architect of the justice we fought for. And I owed her more than grief. I turned on the light, started the recorder. My voice trembled, but it was clear. I read the letter aloud, every word, then paused and spoke into the microphone. If my mother did this, she was a hero in her own way. But justice isn't black or white, it's the blood of those who dared to tell the truth. I knew this recording wasn't for me, it would be evidence, acknowledgement, and maybe the answer for the moment I now stood between truth and punishment. The screen dimmed. The pencil scratched softly against paper. In the dark room, I heard my heartbeat steady like a bridge between past and present. There was no ending. Only continuation to keep searching, keep confronting, keep living with the truth my mother left behind, a burden, and a blessing. Sometimes I still wonder, if I had known this truth from the start, would I have had the courage to stand here? Now, life rarely offers clear lines between right and wrong, but only when we dare to face it do we finally become free. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this story. If you've ever faced a moment that made you look at yourself differently, share it with me, and don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe so we can keep exploring more stories where truth may hurt, but it's always worth hearing.